Глянувши востаннє на цей світ біленький, у смертну годину козак мовив так: хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть, живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки. Як вороги кляті нас на кіл саджали, як живцем палили, у смолі пекли. Козаки у хата життя не благали, про долю країни думи їх були. Хай живе, живе вільна Україна, хай живуть, живуть вічно козаки, хай цвіте червона калина, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки, нехай згинуть воріженьки на вічні віки.
Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and welcome back to the Victory Day stream for day 75 of the news. Of course, this channel never runs a stream on Mondays, but today is going to be the only exception to this rule over the course of the entire war, because today is the 75th day, and it is Victory Day as well. So, with that, I congratulate everyone, and of course the nation of Ukraine, for making it 2.5 months in this war to Victory Day. Currently, they are still holding most of the front lines. No major developments have occurred today, and this may actually end up being an incredibly short stream because the events that unfolded today were much less underwhelming than the worst-case scenario that was anticipated. This is something that Operator Starsky and me touched on last night. We'll also talk about that here in a second. And him and me pretty much came to the consensus that really nothing extraordinary was going to happen today, but just in case, I made sure that we were going to be running a stream tonight, so that way if anything did happen, everyone would have known that there was already a stream showing up. Also, to touch on what is probably one of the most important things on this channel that's happened in the recent days, is that last night, we had Operator Starsky on. Operator Starsky, of course, is widely known across YouTube as one of the war correspondents that the Ukrainians have, a press officer who's been traveling around the country and showing a large amount of the victories and damages that the Ukrainians have inflicted on Russian troops. Of course, it was wonderful to have him on as a guest last night, and we also had set a very lofty goal to achieve since he was here. A goal of $50,000 to be raised for Doctors Without Borders. When I set that goal, I had the general idea that that goal would not be reached. It would probably get around $30,000, even with everyone's best efforts, and it would stop there, and we wouldn't get any further. And over pretty much the entirety of last night, we saw that pretty much over the course of the entire stream, the donations skyrocketed. Never before has this channel seen such a large amount of support for a fundraiser, and it was really incredible to see. And it also was very impressive to Starsky, who had never actually seen the Leaf Spring Army in action until yesterday. And also, to answer someone's question, I did tell him what the Leaf Spring Army was prior to the stream, so he did know what I was talking about and understood what was up. So anyways, The fundraiser took off. It did incredibly well. I rallied one more time with everyone else, sent in another $100, and then the last round of donations came in. And once all this smoke had pretty much cleared, we had raised $52,108 for Doctors Without Borders yesterday. And I have to say that that's one hell of an achievement, and that's the highest fundraiser that we've ever had on this channel by a mile, by a country mile. I believe that the total now, although I haven't been able to add it up, Matthew and me, not to complain a lot, but we are absolutely wiped out today. This is, of course, usually our rest day, so we're always wiped out this day. But golly, I mean, like, we are exhausted. So sadly, I haven't been able to do much in that category. But we did get a pretty good idea that it's definitely past the $200,000 mark, and it's heading towards $225,000 most likely. So once again, I've got to thank everyone on the stream who was a member of the Lee Spring Army and supported this wonderful and great cause last night. And also, I would like to give a special thanks to Naria, who has been here over and over on these Sunday fundraisers and sends in massive amounts of support to them. And I just have to say, if anyone deserves a lot of recognition for the fundraisers doing how well they do and the amount of support that's put behind them, I would make sure to say that Naria would be one of those people. So if everyone in the chat, if Naria is here tonight, could make sure to thank Naria for the massive amount of support she sent in. She sent in $5,000. I mean, like, that's pretty tough to send in. Not a lot of people have that kind of money. I don't. And so I once again want everyone to thank her so much for her support, and also everyone else that sent in massive amounts of support, because she wasn't the only one. There were many others. And so with that, we're now going to go over the schedule for tonight's news. Starting off, we're going to start in the Irpin area. We have one bit of news there. We are then going to move into Russia, where we will be covering some of the news that occurred in Moscow today. We'll also be heading far into the east of Russia once more to show y'all what a real Victory Day parade looks like outside of Moscow and St. Petersburg. We're then going to move back into Ukraine and cover the location unknowns. We'll then pause for 3 questions from the live chat in between the location unknowns and Kharkiv. We'll then move further on down the line, and we'll cover the Kharkiv news and the Southern Front news, and then that'll pretty much wrap up the news for today. Also, let me make sure to switch this one here. This will actually be the last bit of news we cover. And so, without further ado, I once again want to thank everyone who supported last night's fundraiser. That was an impressive amount that we raised, and it, of course, is highly appreciated by Doctors Without Borders, Ukraine as a whole, and me, of course. And I thank you all so much for being members of the Lee Spring Army and helping to do such wonderful things. And with that, we're now going to move to the news. Starting off in Irpin today, we've seen that Irpin has officially been cleared of all explosives, at least within the city itself. Irpin has been treated pretty much by the sappers. As you can see, the title does say that, and the explosives have been cleared. Here we can actually see some stockpiles of these artillery shells and rounds.
Знайдені на нашій території, їх хлопці по розмінуванню зібрали, далі будуть знищувати. Це катапульта з російського літака. Це повністю все ми знайшли і наші хлопці позабирали. І далі будуть знищувати. А з цієї сторони це вже відстріляно, це вже металобрухт. Умовно кажучи, воно безпечне.
You just see loads of rounds, all kinds of different varieties of rounds. You can see 203 millimeters in there, 127 millimeter rockets. You know, pretty much the entire assortment of unguided rockets that can be fired from any kind of MLRS system in Russian service. And you just gotta say, I mean, like, it's nuts to think that that many unexploded ordnances were sitting around in Irpin just waiting to be collected. And so with that, we're now going to move into Russia to pretty much the entire reason why we ran the stream today, and we're actually going to cover that first. We've seen footage of the Victory Day parade today, and there was, of course, major noticeable changes to the Victory Day parade and its scheduling that we haven't seen in years prior, but there was a somewhat excusable reason for one of them. Here we can see, of course, the crowd of people who are getting ready for this Victory Day parade. I guess you could call them the perpetrators of the massacre and illegal war in Ukraine. We'll skip forward a little bit because this thing is long, and we're not going to stay here for an hour and 32 minutes. Look at it. We can see Satan incarnate getting ready to walk up to the podium and give a speech. We can now see him shaking hands with some of the older heads in the Russian military, or I guess you could say Soviet military, considering how old they are. We can also see Discount Lukashenko. Let's go back and take a look at that real quick. So, you know, he's going through, he's shaking everyone's hands. Oh, come on. Let's get to Discount Lukashenko. Come on. Where is he? Right there. You see that guy? Discount Lukashenko with a mustache and everything. So we're now going to let the video continue. And so with that, we're now going to skip forward past this. We're, of course, going to show the victory banner real quick. This is the victory banner. This is the flag that was flown over Mariupol, which a lot of people just call it the Soviet flag. But while it is a Soviet flag, it's not like a per se communist flag. It's really just a symbol of the Soviet Union winning over Germany, because that was the exact flag that was flown over the Reichstag at the end of the war. So the Russians worship that flag. It's actually in a museum now, the real one, and they've copied it, and they pretty much use this thing everywhere they go, and every time they talk about victory, that's the flag they think of. Here we can see, you know, years prior, and also we're going to note something else about the facade here, this Victory Day Parade. Years prior, looking at all these Russian troops, people would be like, wow, they're well turned out. Look at how well these guys are marching. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Look at how well they're marching. Oh, they must be a perfect military. I mean, a high-tech, really well put together. They put the American military to shame. That's what a lot of people have been saying. But as we now know, these are nothing more than clowns in suits. So with that, we're going to skip forward. Putin had a speech. Of course, there's no speech-to-text translation on this video, sadly. But to summarize his speech, he blamed the West, pretty much the United States, for perpetrating this entire war, and said that Russia was in fact defending itself, which we all know is just a bold-faced lie.
Героев Великой Отечественной. Они несут фотографии своих родных, погибших солдат, которые навеки остались молодыми и уже ушедшими от нас.
We'll then skip forward past the Devil's speech, and we'll now move to the Russian anthem. Hey, look. I wonder how many modern artillery, you know, quote-unquote modern artillery pieces in the Russian military they had to pull off the lines to do this little gun salute during the anthem. This is something they do every year, and of course that's a joke. These pieces in particular, I believe, are 76 millimeter cannons. I'm not particularly sure. I'm not exactly an expert on these exactly, but we haven't actually seen a video of them being used, so that is a joke. We're now going to move on to the actual clip of the infantry column section of the parade. So this is pretty standard fare. I believe this is a school of cadets here, based off of the black uniforms, although I'm not particularly sure. One thing I'm somewhat disappointed by is the lack of dishwashers that we see in this parade. We haven't seen any of those, but we're now going to skip forward in the infantry section. You know, whenever I see Russian soldiers marching now, all I can imagine is each one is worth about 2 bags of buckwheat, some sunflower seed oil, and a postcard. So suffice it to say, this military parade will account for a lot of buckwheat and sunflower seed oil. Now, this is something important to note right here. You see this whole entire Victory Day parade setup? This is incredibly sparse compared to years prior. And so I'm going to pull that up real quick, the 2015 Victory Day parade. And I'm going to show you all that in comparison. And you can show that apparently the sanctions are having a massive effect on what they're able to set up. Let me go back real quick. Let's go to this one because this is the whole entire uncut parade. Oh my gosh. Hang on, everyone. We got to get through an ad. Alright. Man, golly, dude. They started that off really bad. This man is Meal Team 6. That's no soldier whatsoever. We're now going to skip forward a little bit to the actual part of the parade. Of course, 2015 was a huge event because it was, I believe, the 70th anniversary of World War II. But you can see that the actual facade they set up behind the military parade was massive in comparison to what they were able to produce now. So let's go and try and find a good clip of that real quick. It's a massive parade. Especially in 2015, it was huge. It was like 12,000 soldiers in just the infantry column section of the parade. Sadly, I don't think we'll be able to get that facade on the video, but y'all saw it a little bit. And so let's go back to this video and look at that in comparison. And you can tell that the funds they had to actually set up this parade appeared to be much lower. This is something you would expect from a former Soviet country that was incredibly poor, like Belarus, not the Russian Federation. So it is showing, at least passively in a way to me, that the sanctions are taking effect on the country. With that, we're going to let this continue. You know, you can't ever look at these soldiers the same anymore. You know that they're all a bunch of jokes, really. If these are most likely conscripts with no experience. And they crumble in the face of actual resistance. So it's not even a really good show of force anymore, this parade. But anyways, we're now going to skip forward a whole load. And you'll notice that it's 58 minutes in that the armored column finally makes its appearance. And so let's go back to 2015. And we're just going to keep this video up so that way we can compare, timestamp-wise, how long it was before the armored column arrived here in the 2015 parade. Let me check. So, at the 54-minute mark in this video, which films the entire Victory Day parade from when the bell of the Kremlin rings to when the last aircraft in the 2015 military parade flies over. And at the 54-minute mark, we finally saw vehicles coming in. At the 58-minute mark, we now see armored vehicles in this Victory Day parade rolling in. This tells us that they've apparently padded an extra few minutes of time with more infantry, most likely conscripts that they pull from the surrounding camps, depots, and bases near Moscow to try and fill in the time, because you are going to notice that the actual amount, I'm sorry, I just drew a blank there, but the actual amount of vehicles in this parade is markedly smaller than years before. And so we can see a T-34-85 here. This year, it's the only one in the parade. In 2015, we actually saw an entire, I guess you could say, unit of T-34-85s in the parade. What's very interesting about the T-34-85s in the Victory Day parade is that none of these are actually World War II era. These are all post-World War II era. The World War II era T-34-85s were lacking a lot of basic parts. They had very poor welds. They did not have rubber road wheels on the tanks. It was actually solid steel, and they were incredibly poorly made. So actually, most of the T-34-85s you see now are not World War II era T-34s. They're actually post-war T-34s. We can now see the Tiger armored cars behind them. Of course, we know that those aren't really that impressive because about 2,000 of them have been destroyed at this point. So, we're going to skip forward a little bit. We can also see these turreted, well, they skipped forward a little bit and went to the next clip, but we saw some turreted Tigers, which we had not seen in use on the front lines before, so I'm assuming that those are very new, and they're probably in such low numbers that the Russians aren't actually fielding them. Here we can see a BMP-2M, which is pretty new, and we also haven't seen a lot of those as well. And right behind them, and this tells you how small of a unit the BMP-2s are representing this year at the Victory Day Parade. Right behind this group is BMP-3s. And that's telling you a lot about how much armor they're lacking for this year's parade. And if we can get a panning shot, you'll actually see that the group was small. We can also see some kind of new armored personnel carrier, but we've never actually seen it in use on the front lines. Alright, there we go. Now you can actually see what we've got here. 3 BMP-2s. Alright, that's an incredibly small number. If we go back to 2015, that's nearly nothing. We've got 2 BMP-3s. That's literally nothing. And then we've got 2 of the modern armored personnel carriers. I don't really know exactly what they're called. I'm sure that a lot of y'all in the comments do. Hopefully a lot of y'all can share that information. But still, an incredibly small number of actual armored personnel carriers in the parade this year. We can now, of course, see behind them the Russia's Pride, although there's only 14 prototype versions of this vehicle, and none of them are actually being used. Here we can see T-72B3s. Of course, a very normal display in the Russian military parades, and also a very normal sight to be destroyed on the Ukrainian front lines, as these tanks, as far as we've been able to collect information-wise, are the tanks that have been destroyed the most, are the T-72B3s. As you can see, another small amount. Only 7 T-72B3s in the parade this year. And if we go back to 2015, let's go back and make sure that our numbers are not skewed. Well, let me actually just show you all this. We're going to compare 2015 directly. In that parade, they had BTR-82s. They also had these large armored command trucks, it appears, although I'm not entirely sure about that. I'm going to skip forward a little bit. We can see a BMD-4, and we can actually see an entire unit of them. It appears that there's around, most likely, 3, 6, 8 BMD-4s in the parade. We did not see any this year. So we're going to skip forward a little bit more. We can now see one of the APCs we saw in this year's parade. And it appears that there's around 3 or 4... Whoa, wait a minute. Look at this. They had 6 of them in 2015's parade. This year, they only had 2. And we know that these aren't even being used in active combat in Ukraine. So I don't know why they're lacking in armored vehicles so much. And of course, that's sarcastic. We all know why good and well. It's because a large amount of the Russian armed forces, in terms of armor, has been pretty much obliterated. With that, we can now see T-90Ms behind the T-72B3s. Of course, we've already seen one of these destroyed near Kharkiv, and we know that these are very few in numbers, around 36 to 38 of them in service, and one of them has already been destroyed. So you're seeing about half of the T-90Ms in the entirety of the Russian Federation here in this one Victory Day parade. We can now, of course, see Russia's prototype Pride, the T-14 Armata. Only 14 of these have been produced. All of them are prototype models. They're still in testing, and there's no production series of the T-14s yet. So these are entirely a parade ground beauty, in a way. We can now, of course, see BM-21 Grads, and you can just notice how pitiful this year's armor display is compared to 2015. I'm not even going to go back and compare and contrast them anymore. We can see that this guy's so bored he's checking his phone. Like, I hope y'all saw that. Right there, where my mouse is. Oh, what a cool shot. Wow. We can see BETR-82s, you know, yada, yada, yada. Of course, they have their Mistas. We're going to skip forward a little bit so we can see their Mistas. It looks like they actually have a somewhat reasonable number of them, even compared to 2015. I tried to look over that today. We can now see some S-300 systems being paraded through the grounds. Of course, we've seen some of these destroyed as well, mostly by Bayraktars. Let's check this out. Okay, now they brought in the BMDs. But how many do they have here? There's no way they just have a single column of them, right? They're not really showing us a large panning shot of them. Nope. You got 3 there. Well, hell, they're not even going to give us a full-blown picture to see how many vehicles there are in the parade. Now we can see some form of armored personnel carrier that looks like it's based off of the BMP-3 chassis, but I've never seen this one before. We can see that they have AS valves as well. We're now going to skip forward a little bit. Of course, they show off the Topol Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Carrier. The Russians show that one off every year. Nothing special there. And then, that right there at the hour and 6-minute mark was the end of the parade. If we compare that to the Victory Day parade of 2015, the end of the parade was actually 17 minutes after this one ends. And so you can get the idea that a lot was lacking this year in the military parade in terms of the actual number of vehicles, and also the aerial column, the air column was completely removed from the parade. They say it was mostly due to weather, although it could be argued that it may be for other reasons, although that would be assumptions in both regards. And so with that, that was the Victory Day parade. With that, we're now going to move on to an American musician being beat up today. Apparently some drunk Russians were yelling at him because he wasn't playing Victory Day music, and so they got pissed off at him and started beating him. So I'm going to let y'all see this video.
Ребята, разойдитесь, пожалуйста.
Говори, блядь, громко, американец! Внимание, всем постам, нападение на американец! Давай, успокойтесь, что творите? Внимание, всем постам! Все нормально. Нападение на страну Карла. Он американец?
Пожалуйста, безопасность.
Отойдите, ребят. Вы спокойно, никто. Внимание, всем отойдите. Вы не трогайте.
So you're getting a pretty good idea here that the average Russian citizen, when these are in a drunken stupor, actually have a pretty decent malice against Western citizens, because now they're taking out on the ones they can find in Russia that are still there. Of course, it kind of plays into the question, to me, why would an American stay in Russia for this long after the war started? I would never step foot on Russian soil during the entirety of this war. And so while this guy is being beat up, and you can see that the Russians hate Americans in general, and they're trying to take it out on this guy, the question still stands for me: why in the world would he even be there? Because I would have left as soon as the war started, because I wouldn't want to be anywhere around a government that's as nutty as the Russian one. But with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news from the Russian area, where we can see some interviews with Russian people. I'm not going to interrupt them. It's just some speech-to-text stuff. So I'm going to let y'all see this and just let you see their answers to this question. It is a little long, but the answers are actually incredibly interesting. So with that, here's the video.
Как вы считаете, много ли в Украине нацистов?
Я считаю, что там их нет.
А для чего тогда вся эта спецоперация нужна была?
Неизвестно. Это сложный вопрос. Если в мирном населении, то нет. А в войсках, это уже не нам решать.
Тогда для чего вся эта спецоперация нужна?
Понять не имею.
Много.
А вот откуда они там взялись?
Еще от войны они там не всех наши вычистили.
Они есть везде, что в России, что и в Украине. Они были и будут, никуда не денется. Неважно, кто нацист, кто не нацист. Главное, мирно не сделать.
Много ли нацистов в Украине?
Много.
А как думаете, откуда они там вот появились?
С 45-го года остались все. Нацистов, там все руководство нацистское, а все население, к сожалению, затюкано и прижато во имя нацистских интересов.
Я думаю, что хватает.
А откуда они там взялись?
За счет занесенной туда идеологии, которая их потихонечку подращивает.
Значит, спецоперация все-таки нужна была.
Думаю, что да.
Ну не все это точно.
А вот те, которые там есть, откуда вот они взялись?
Они воспитались.
А спецоперация все-таки, считаете, нужна была?
Конечно.
Много, я так думаю.
А вот откуда они там взялись?
Не знаю. Бандеровцы, походу.
То есть вы считаете, что спецоперация все-таки нужна была?
Да, нужна. В целом не думаю.
То есть вы считаете, что их нет?
Нет, я не думаю, что их нет. Я не думаю, что их, условно, подавляющее большинство. Большинство, скорее всего, просто как случайное стечение обстоятельств, но я все же думаю, что да, есть.
Но вы считаете, что их недостаточно для того, чтобы все-таки спецоперация это проводилась?
Я затрудняюсь ответить на этот вопрос, если честно.
Я считаю, что много, потому что последние 8 лет много вложено средств для воспитания нового поколения с уклоном нацизма. Воспитано новое поколение. Я из-за этого считаю, что много.
То есть все-таки спецоперация была нужна?
Спецоперация была нужна. Это было неизбежно. Сейчас, мне кажется, многие понимают, что это было неизбежно. Иначе пришлось бы воевать через месяц на нашей территории.
Если относительно населения, то, конечно, немного, но достаточно для того, чтобы там мутить воду.
Как вы считаете, откуда они там появились?
Появились? Это, я считаю, все пошло от потомков тех же ауновцев, этих бандеровцев.
То есть вы считаете, что спецоперация была нужна?
Да. И уже давно.
Как вы считаете, много ли в Украине нацистов?
Они есть, как и везде. Просто кто-то активный, кто-то нет. Там они, безусловно, есть.
Достаточно их было, чтобы совершать всю эту операцию?
Если она свершилась, то думаю, что да.
Думаю, есть. Везде есть.
А откуда они там появились?
Не могу сказать, не знаю.
Я считаю, что есть элементы нацизма в любой стране, в том числе и в Российской Федерации, также и в Украине. На Украине я последний раз был в 2003 году. Был в Харькове. Могу сказать за себя лично, что нацистов не видел. Проявления фашизма открытого тоже не наблюдал. Но хочу заметить, что ультраправых фашистских и неофашистских организаций, предполагаю, хватает в любой стране цивилизованной, современной в мире.
Как вы считаете, много?
So with that, I'm going to end that there so that way this doesn't go on too long. But you can see that a few Russians actually said that they don't really know why the special operation is being conducted, but most of them actually agreed with it and said that it should continue. And then there were some that were on the fence. So kind of like an interesting array of opinions, but we know that for the large part, the only ones that are publicly announced over there in Russia are the ones that are in support of the war. And we do know that there is a sizable enough amount of people who do not support the war, that there is partisan activities being conducted throughout the entirety of the country. And with that, we're now going to move out of Moscow, and we're now going to move down into the far east of the country, where we can actually see a Victory Day parade in a normal Russian village, and you can see how depressing this looks. So I'm going to let y'all just see this, and then we're going to move on to the location unknowns. Pretty depressing sight, I have to say. And with that, we're now going to move on out of Russia, considering that they've had their sad and pitiful Victory Day parades across the entirety of the country, and we're now going to move into the location unknowns. Starting off, we can see a low-flying Ukrainian Su-24, showing that the Ukrainian Air Force is not out of the fight just yet, as we've seen a couple of Ukrainian aircraft operating over the course of the past few days, and this is another instance of that. You can see the Su-24 right where my mouse cursor is. Of course, wonderful to know that the Ukrainian Air Force does exist in some capacity, and they are still going. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a happy victory day for the Russians, as the Ukraine's 63rd Mechanized Brigade strikes multiple Russian vehicles near this small village and wipes them out. So I'm going to let this play. Of course, I have to mute it. I just realized that there is copyrighted music in here later on. So now we can see the first tank smoldering from an artillery blast. Unfortunately, I can't tell what kind it is. It looks like it may be a T-72 or a BMP-3. Of course, that's a huge variance in between the two. We can now see the next tank get hit and brew up. We can now see shells landing around some kind of compound. We can see a destroyed Russian vehicle there in that ditch. We can also see another destroyed Euro 4320, another what appears to maybe be a BMP-3. We can now then see a replay of that artillery strike, and we can see another picture of where those shells landed. So with that, that's the end of that video. Wonderful to see that the Victory Day was well received by the Russians on the front lines. It appears that they had a very fiery and, I guess you could say, exciting Victory Day, like it should be. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we see the Ukrainians ambush a Russian truck with an in-law. So I'm going to let y'all see this real quick.
Бля, мене не в'їбе вона ззаді. А, братан? Мене не в'їбе ззаді. В'їбе? Щас, підожди. Підожди. Да, давай.
As we can see, we're just waiting. The Russians are down this roadway. And we can now hear the in-law fired, and it hit the Russian vehicle dead on, and now the crew is going to scoot as fast as they can, so that way the Russians don't get a chance to gun them down. So, of course, wonderful to see that the Ukrainians are managing to sneak up on Russian units that close and take out vehicles that the Russian army has. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we're going to see the mustache man from the Belarusian Legion is not alone. Apparently, he's multiplying through some kind of cellular mitosis. So let's take a look at this. Look, it's another one. Pretty cool, of course, and hopefully they continue to do an incredibly good job, as we know that the Belarusian Foreign Legion has been doing an incredibly large amount of work and has been in some of the toughest areas of the front lines in the northern front when it did exist. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians destroy a BTR. Of course, I have to mute this because it has copyrighted music in it. But here we can see on the thermal imaging system the BTR right down there. I'm not exactly sure what kind it is, if it's a BTR-82 or a BTR-60, but we can now see the bomblet fall onto it and hit it dead on, taking out that BTR, or the Russians most likely won't be able to claim insurance on it. I don't think insurance covers Ukrainian drone strikes. So with that, that's the end of that video. Wonderful to see the Ukrainians still take out armored vehicles. And with that, we've seen two Russian Su-25s. Well, actually, I'm sorry, correction, that's a video for later on. But we can see a cockpit view of a Russian Su-25 in action. It does have copyrighted music in it, so I'll just narrate what's going on. Here we can see the Su-25 flying low over the treetops, of course trying to avoid ground fire as much as possible. We know that Ukrainian anti-air defense is incredibly strong right now and has contested and controlled most of the airspace of Ukraine over the course of the war. We can now see the video slow down, and they're pointing out that this is the village of Popasna here, a city with a population of 19,000 people. And so it looks like the Su-25 is now flying directly over Popasna. We can now see them say, let me see if I can understand, Popasniki Rina. Unfortunately, I don't read Russian too well. That says something about the Popasnan something, but unfortunately, I can't really read Cyrillic that well to actually know what it's saying. Now we can see them highlighting another building and another area, it seems, like a large section of park or property. So now we can see the Su-25 conducting a rocket attack on the ground. We, of course, did not see the Ukrainian units it was attacking, so we don't really know if the Su-25 hit anything. And with that, that's the end of the video. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where you can see Ukrainian troops on standby at a road with T-64 BVs in front of them, apparently to support the infantry's advance. So I'm going to let y'all see this video from the start. Now, that's a rare sight to see Ukrainian tanks. Ukrainians, of course, are using their tanks very sparingly and wisely to make sure that they don't sustain as many losses in their tank force as the Russians are. But we can now see that the tanks are supporting an infantry group in an unknown location. So, of course, great to see. And with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we see the Ukrainian tractors have not given up yet, and they are still hard at work behind the lines. As we can see here, Ukrainian farmer is now hauling away an MTLB. And to answer Maxim's statement, if it's Popasna, then it's a known region. Yes, that's true, but I didn't read Popasna earlier. You got to remember, I've only had about 4 hours of sleep, maybe. And then I've been working nonstop, so sometimes don't watch all the way through the video. I just mark stuff as a location unknown if I can't find out where it is at the very start. So just keep that in mind. And with that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see another Tiger destroyed. So here we can see it. It appears to have been flipped upside down as well, which is a bit new. Haven't really seen vehicles being flipped completely upside down over the course of this war, but of course, great to see. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we see the Ukrainians capturing another tank. This time, a T-72 from the Ukrainian side is pulling away a captured T-80 BV. Look, it even has the white walls painted on. It's like it's a Victory Day version of the T-80. But of course, wonderful to see that the Ukrainians have captured another Russian tank, and I believe that will bring the total over 120 captured tanks all in all. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we're going to once again see an M777 in action, as a large amount of videos are now coming out of this British-made but American-used artillery piece being used by the Ukrainians against the Russians. Fortunately, looks like we got a slideshow going on here. If you would like to see this video, just make sure to click on the map. It's in the link in the description below. Or you can watch the Enforcer short clip that came out today that actually has this clip in it. So with that, unfortunately, I'm not going to show it on stream because the slideshow problem is a pretty hard one to fix. Unless if it fixes it here. So we're going to skip forward and see if it's fixed it. It has, thankfully. So we'll actually watch the video here. Amazing to see, and it's good to know that American military equipment is being used in Ukraine by Ukrainians and inflicting damage on Russian units. We're now actually seeing how Western gear pretty much goes up against the Russians toe-to-toe, and the answer is it's doing incredibly well. We already knew that from the Javelins, but now we're starting to see that on a wide array of weapon systems that have now been sent by the United States. We'll also get to weapons and supplies being sent by the U.S. here in a bit. Finally, as our last bit of location unknown news, we can see a Javelin hitting a Russian tank. So we see the Russian tank is highlighted here, and it went up. There's not really much to explain here, but that tank was absolutely obliterated. As we can see, the fireball engulfs the entirety of the tank, most likely meaning that it's had a severe ammo detonation, which may have lifted the turret off of its chassis, and it's definitely burned the crew with the tank. So with that, we've reached the end of the location unknown news. And before we move on to the Kharkiv and well, pretty much, actually the rest of the news around the map today, we're going to answer 3 questions from the chat, and then we're going to cover the rest of the news for the night. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
So good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt once again. Quickly, I want to say thank you to all of you that were here last night for last night's absolutely legendary stream. It was a very long stream, but it was absolutely incredible. We reached $52,000. I'm kind of with the Enforcer on this one. I personally didn't think we were going to reach that lofty goal, but I underestimated the Leaf Spring Army, and y'all came through tremendously. So thank you very much.
And speaking of which, before we move on, Matthew, Matthew actually asked me earlier in the day. He said, "Hey, how high are you setting this goal tonight?" I said 50,000, and he said, "Oh man, like that's probably going to be impossible. You know they're not going to make it to that." And I said, I believe in them. I said, but if they don't make it, I'll just lower the goal so that way the money will still go where it needs to go anyways. And then we reached that goal and even got a couple of $1,000s over it. So I was actually really impressed and amazed with that along with Matthew. But honestly, we both kind of went into last night with a little bit of skepticism that we may not be able to do it. But of course, the Leaf Spring Army never fails, and we always manage to reach the goals we set out. So thank you, everyone, once again. It's always been impressive to see us all come together. We have one of the most active communities here on YouTube that's been supporting Ukraine through the fundraisers and also on the streams. And so I have to thank you all once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the questions. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So first up, guess what? Sylvester the Cat, we have your super chat tonight. Sylvester puts in a $77.99 donation and does not leave a comment.
Well, you know what they say, he never sends one in. I'm just playing, but I thank you so much, Sylvester. We did see that one tonight, and I thank you so much once again. Also, since Sylvester, you did do that, and it just reminded me of something, I would like to know that we would like to answer everyone's questions. We haven't said this in a while. I don't want to sit there and act like the live chat questions are neglected, but everyone's got to understand that every night we have around 8,000 questions come in on stream. And so if we were to sit around and try and answer everyone's question, we would never end the stream. It would go on forever. So I hate that, and I want to let y'all know that we wish we could, but unfortunately due to time constraints, we can't. So thank you everyone once again for asking questions. We try and get several and answer them. And also on top of that, the other thing is that people act like we just kind of do like the live chat stuff, you know, the non-super chat live chat things at the end, just as like a formality. The thing is that wasn't originally the plan. The plan was that super chats wouldn't take up a lot of time, but people send in so much support and they also have questions that we want to make sure to thank everyone by giving them an answer to their question that helps us to keep going. So I hope that kind of explains why a lot of questions in the live chat don't go answered. So please don't take it personally. It's just that we don't have enough time to answer everyone's questions. So thank you everyone once again, and thank you Sylvester for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And Enforcer, I have to quickly point out, I just saw a comment from a viewer that made me start thinking. It's absolutely crazy that this channel is at 55,000 subscribers, and we were somehow able to get a press officer on from the Ukrainian army during a war. It's just, you know, if you really think about it, that's really crazy to think that how the modern war works. We can just literally get somebody on to a YouTube channel live during a war and they can tell us about it. That's like never happened before, and it's just sort of strange how it works in modern wars.
It really is, honestly, when you think about it. And that's something that kind of hit me today while I was trying to do some stuff around here and I was working on that summary video today. I actually started thinking, I was like, wow, we just had a officer from the Ukrainian army get on stream last night and talk with us and help us to run a fundraiser. And I was actually thinking that's really bizarre. You know, it kind of brings the war really close to what we're doing, because it's not like something that's happening in a far-flung region of the world where we don't even know or talk to anyone from there. We just, you know, we actually talk to them. We actually see a lot of them. I have friends over there, and it's really insane when you think about it like that. But yeah, that's a very interesting observation. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
Okay, and the next question comes from BC Skyman, who says, and it's a $20 donation, excuse me. He says, did you hear that Slovakia is going to trade 30 T-72 tanks and possibly give them 29 MiG-29s? Awesome stream last night, and keep up the great work.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I'm glad that you do enjoy everything we do here on this channel to help Ukraine and also deliver the best news we can. And to answer that question about the Slovaks and what they're doing, sadly, I don't really have a lot of answers. We do know that I believe it was, it was the Slovaks that have already sent in some T-72Ms, but I don't really know about them sending in any kind of MiG-29s, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. But I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that did answer the question, at least on the tank aspect of things. And so with that, we're going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to cover the rest of the news from around Ukraine and also worldwide, and then we'll return to the question segment.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from DJ Bonebreaker, who says, I just found out today that someone made a crappy recorder flute cover of the Soviet anthem. I think this would be the perfect theme song for this year's Victory Day Parade in Moscow, LOL.
Well, thank you very much for the support. I've heard that one before. It's actually been a very common meme. And those of you may not know what a meme is, because memes are, you know, although they've been around for a bit, they are still kind of new. A meme is a kind of like internet joke. Usually it's a video or an image that is some kind of humorous thing. And it's kind of gone from actually having like a punchline or a joke in them to now, I mean, like Matthew looks at memes too. They've kind of devolved into just like this weird randomness, but still there's some pretty solid memes that come out here and there. And I've seen one like that for the Russians. So with that, I do thank you very much for the support, and I can agree that would be pretty funny to hear being played at the Victory Day Parade in Russia. And with that, we've reached the end of this question segment. If you did send in a super chat, do not fear. We will answer all of them, and we will answer some questions in the live chat before the streams end. But with that, we're now going to return to the news, starting off in Kharkiv, where we can see a video from today showing that Ukrainian troops have managed to capture a brand new trench. We're not exactly sure where. We know it was in the Kharkiv area, but we don't know if it was, say, you know, like in Paramoyka or Ukrainka or Stary Saltiv. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to adjust the front lines yet, but we will keep an eye out to see if we can get any updates to make the front lines be accurately reflected as best as possible. So with that, here's the video.
Пидорских окопов! Все горит, мы их взяли! Вот тут Ванька, убегая, оставил все свое говно. немножко нам боекомплекта привез из Рашки. Не сиделось ему. И мы взяли их неебаные окопы. Пан Конован, мы их взяли, блядь. Машину пригнать не могу. Я пойду СПГ паковать. Слышишь, позови ко мне Наруто. Блядь, позови Наруто ко мне, мы пойдем СПГ, скажи, паковать. Пан Конован, скажите пару слов. Скажите пару слов. Слава Украине! Героям слава! В дыму все. Пидорские окопы взяты. О, далеко текали сосунки, вот их укрепления. Вот так вот. Пойдем СПГ сложим. А там СПГ еще стоит. Вы АГС берите, мы СПГ. Ну пойдем, Тёма сказал нам тут стоять. Штурманули пидоров. Вот ихний брендичек. Буржуечка тут была. Вот так вот жили тут говнюки, блин. Сейчас надо быть поаккуратнее, а то могут сюрпризов поставлять. Хотя навряд ли бежали, как девчонки. Наруто! Передай привет!
And with that, that is the end of that video. You can see there that this Ukrainian soldier apparently had pretty much sprinted like a marathon sprint from how much he was out of breath to this trench. And apparently the Ukrainians were now pretty much surveying what had happened around it. We could see a burning vehicle in the background, although we couldn't identify what kind it was. And so progress has been made in the Kharkiv area. We don't know where, though, and we don't know by how much. So with that, we're now going to move further down the front. We've unfortunately gotten no more news of the counterattacks occurring near Stary Saltiv. We are keeping an eye out on those. Moving even further down the front towards Izium, we have not gotten any news from there today. Moving even further down the front, we haven't gotten any news near Liman, nor Severodonetsk, nor the entire Luhansk region, nor the Donetsk region. Pretty much the entire southeast front went silent today beyond the location unknown videos we had. So with that in mind, sadly, we don't really have a lot to report on those fronts right now. We do know that there is ongoing heavy fighting there, but sadly, we don't really have an idea of what's actually unfolding. So with that, we're now going to go down to Mariupol, where we've had a couple of bits of information today. Starting off, we can see that the Azovstal is still under attack, as it appears that the Russians were desperately trying to take the Azovstal and Mariupol as a whole before Victory Day, but we now know that those plans have been thwarted. I'm sure that they'll probably keep up the attacks afterwards, just so that way they can try and achieve their final goal of the war, you know, in a way, now that they've lowered the bar so far. And it may just be to clear out the Azovstal and then say that they've wiped out the Nazis in Ukraine. They may be going for that. Who knows? So with that, that is the end of that video. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news, where we can see footage from Mariupol. I'm not really sure when this was taken, because Mariupol looks to be a decent amount intact, and we can also see Ukrainians outside of the Azovstal in some kind of residential area. Yet, we have not seen this video anywhere before during these streams, and so it was uploaded as under today's news, although the footage may be old. With that, here's the video.
Зараз буде відходить. Парні, туди, на той перехресток. З цієї хурні, блядь, можна було вискочити і в'їбати його прямо в жопу. 100 метрів. Блядь, там танк в жопу стоїть. Там танк в жопою, блядь. От такий зазорчик був. Такий зазорчик може і не взяти. Просто вискочити, от, сісти на коліно. Піхота не бачила, блядь, до останнього вони бігли до мене і вони не бачили. Давайте, може, тобі помощь треба з ним, ні? Мені отсюда, якщо він викрутиться, я отсюда стрілю. Окей? Я теж. Якщо він дулом сюди не поверне. Це мені головне буховухо, блядь. Блядь, просто якщо є можливість, зараз за цією хуйньою отойти ще на одну вулицю от через пустир. Скільки нас? Раз, два, три, чотири.
We can now see the firefights unfolding. We can see that a Ukrainian soldier has unfortunately been hit, it seems.
Отходим! Давай, давай! Плюс, плюс! Димовуху йому! Дай накину гранату. Гранату? Гранату? Да. Давай гранату. Да, вже не буду. Блядь, это! Это! Танк идет!
We can now see the cameraman sprinting across the open area, and with that, the video ends. Unfortunately, I did not see on film where the wounded man was picked up or carried back. I think they may have consigned him as dead. I'm not entirely sure, but we could see that they did get engaged in a pretty nasty firefight where it looks like they may have been taken by surprise a little bit. Hopefully, the unit managed to be okay. Of course, we're not sure when this footage was filmed, but with that, that was the video. With that, we're finally going to move on to our last one, where we can see a video from today of the Azov above ground inside the Azovstal. So, with that, here's the video.
Конкретно. Бо, ну, блядь, типа, топтать плац, нахуй.
Я твой плац топтал.
Тупо, коли підготовка до парада, ти тупо все літо піздуєш, як долбойоб на плацу. Щоб комбат сказав після першої полосини, ви молодці, пройшли лучше всіх.
Wait a minute, hang on 1 second. Before we continue this video, I'm actually going to go back to the last one, because I see a lot of people saying that the guy actually got up, and I was actually looking away from the screen for a second, trying to look at something else on stream. So everyone just bear with me for a second. So I'm going to go through and look at this and see if the guy did get up, so that way I can make sure to clarify that.
Давайте, може, тобі помочь треба з ним, ні? Мені отсюда, якщо він викрутиться, я отсюда стрілю. Куди не поверне. Не бухову. Можливість, зараз на вулицю от через пустир. Скільки...
Okay, let's take a look at this.
Скільки нас? Раз, два, три, чотири.
Alright, so we're going to try and keep an eye on that guy, if we can. So we can now see that he's still on the ground over there at this moment. I can't tell. Hang on, was that the same guy, the bearded guy? Hang on, we're going to have to go back earlier in the video. This is, we got to try and get a good idea of what happened here. I can't tell if he's got a beard. So let me go forward a little bit. Let's watch that again, because I got to see for myself, because he went down when I saw him, but I never saw him get back up because I had to look away for a second. So he's down right there. Soldier runs off. He turns around. We can still see him right there. Now he turns back, looks back. Yeah, I think that's the guy. So yes, sorry, correction everyone, he did actually get up, and it appears that he was largely okay. So that's wonderful to see, actually. I thought that he had actually been killed, so very happy to see that. And with that, we're now going to continue the other video that we had of the Azov inside of Azovstal.
Дуже болить, хоча й ненароком, і ти ростеш, стаєш, мираєш, І то є правда, так не знаєш. Боїшся її, і від мене тікаєш. В стінах своїх так надо сигнає. Спи собі сама, коли біля тебе мене нема. Спи собі сама, біля тебе мене нема. Спи собі сама, біля тебе.
And so with that, we can see that they're having a little bit of fun while still being in the Azovstal, subjected to heavy fire from the Russians every single day, and they're managing to have a little bit of fun, sing, and just, you know, bide their time in a way. So it's wonderful to see. I can see that there's now a battle in the chat now, because everyone, and you know, this one, gotta admit, it's a little aggravating to me. Everyone said the guy did get up, and then I go back and look at the video. I'm like, I think he did get up. Now everyone's saying he didn't get up, so I'm giving up on that one. I don't know what happened to the guy. So with that, we're going to move out of Mariupol now. We're not really sure what's going on there right now. We know that the Russians have still breached the defensive perimeter. As far as we know, they have not been pushed out. We will try and keep an eye on that news and make sure to make any corrections and adjustments if we can. And with that, we're going to move out of Mariupol, and we're now going to move further down the front towards the area of Tokmak, where today we've seen Ukrainian artillery hitting its mark incredibly well. So with that, here's the video. And of course, let me mute this. I just realized that there's copyright music playing. Everyone, bear with me tonight. I'm like literally passing out right now, so bear with me with the problems and delays we're having. So with that, we can see some Russian vehicles burning in a tree line. They've been hit and of course completely destroyed. And it is wonderful to see that Ukrainian artillery is getting more and more accurate as the war keeps going. Sorry, I had to mute that, everyone, but I don't want YouTube to come down here and pop my kneecaps out of my joints. So I have to make sure to mute copyrighted music as much as possible, so that way I don't get in trouble for it. But we can see a large amount of Russian vehicles destroyed. We can actually see some pickup trucks there at the end, which is a very interesting sight. And with that, we're now going to move further down the front line, and we're now going to move towards the coast near Odessa, where we've seen 2 Russian Su-25s flying in formation down the beach. So hopefully this loads. And now I can see this dog like, oh my god, what was that? But hopefully those Su-25s do run into some danger, hopefully get shot down, but one can only hope. All we can see is the Su-25s were flying down the coast earlier today, and it was spotted by a civilian near the beach. With that, we're now going to move to Odessa, where we've seen a couple of occurrences happen today. First off, we've seen an explosion of a mall in Odessa as it was hit by some kind of Russian missile strike. Apparently, supposedly, there was some kind of Ukrainian command post operating in this mall. But you can see that the explosion was incredibly large, as usual, and most likely inflicted a sizable amount of civilian casualties. And with that, that's the end of that video. Of course, Russians are hitting civilian infrastructure. I'm not sure if it had a command headquarters in it. Hopefully it didn't, so that way the command structure in Odessa was not damaged in any way and largely remained intact. And that also means that the Russians once again would be targeting civilians directly, pretty much with their missile attacks. With that, we also have more footage of the attacks that occurred in Odessa, as multiple strikes were reported early in the hours of day 75.
Коля, быстро отошел.
Ой-ой-ой, сейчас будет волна.
So with that, you can see the missile strikes hitting Odessa in the early hours of the morning. Once again, typical Russian tactics, most likely trying to instill fear in the public or try and kill civilians to also instill fear in a way. So with that, of course, usual Russian activities. I hate to say that that's usual. And so with that, we're now going to move on to the second to last bit of news today. This is the largest news that has come out in terms of the support internationally for Ukraine, where we can see that the President of the United States has signed the Lend-Lease into action, I guess you could say. Today he actually went through the process of signing off on it, and so the Lend-Lease is now in effect. $30 billion will be freed up to the Ukrainians, and large amounts of military supplies will start to flow into the country. Of course, incredibly good to see, and I am glad to know that the United States is doing everything in its power to try and help out the Ukrainians while not drawing us directly into the war just yet. So, of course, wonderful to see, and with that, we're now going to round out tonight's news with an address from President Zelenskyy. So with that, here's the video.
Великий народе великої України. 24 серпня 2021 року усією країною ми відзначали 30-річчя нашої незалежності. Хрещатиком йшли наші військові, наші захисники, наша техніка, в небі летіла наша мрія. Немає нічого небезпечнішого, ніж підступний ворог, але немає нічого отрутнішого від удаваного друга. Це слова великого українського філософа Григорія Сковороди. 24 лютого ми зрозуміли цю істину, коли удаваний друг розпочав проти України війну. Це війна не двох армій, це війна двох світоглядів. Варварів, які обстрілюють музей Сковороди і вірять, що їхніми ракетами можна знищити нашу філософію. Вона їх дратує, вона їм чужа, вона їх лякає, вона полягає в тому, що ми вільні люди, які йдуть своїм шляхом. І на цьому шляху сьогодні ми ведемо війну і нікому не віддамо ані клаптика своєї землі. Сьогодні ми відзначаємо День перемоги над нацизмом і нікому не віддамо ані клаптика своєї історії. Ми пишаємось нашими предками, які разом з іншими народами у складі антигітлерівської коаліції перемогли нацизм. І ми нікому не дамо анексувати цю перемогу, не дамо її привласнити. Наш ворог мріяв, що ми відмовимось відзначати 9 травня і перемогу над нацизмом, щоб слово денацифікація отримало шанс. Мільйони українців боролись з нацизмом і пройшли важкий і довгий шлях. Вигнали нацистів з Луганська, вигнали нацистів з Донецька, звільнили від окупантів Херсон, Мелітополь, Бердянськ, вигнали нацистів з Ялти, Сімферополя, Керчі і усього Криму, звільнили від нацистів Маріуполь. Вони вигнали нацистів з усієї України, але названі мною міста сьогодні особливо надихають нас, дають віру, що ми точно проженемо окупантів з власної землі. У День перемоги над нацизмом ми боремось за нову перемогу. Шлях до неї важкий, але ми не сумніваємось, що переможемо. В чому наша перевага над ворогом? Ми розумніші на одну книгу. Це підручник з історії України. Ми б не знали горя, якби всі наші вороги вміли читати і робити правильні висновки. 24 лютого Росія почала наступ. Наступ на ті самі граблі. На них наступає нога кожного окупанта, який приходить на нашу землю. Ми пережили різні війни, але всі мали один фінал. Нашу землю засівали кулі і снаряди, але жоден ворог не зміг пустити тут коріння. Нашими полями їздили ворожі колісниці і танки, але це нікому не принесло плодів. У нашому небі літали ворожі стріли і ракети, але нікому не дано затьмарити нашу блакить. Нема кайданів, які зможуть скувати наш вільний дух. Нема окупанта, який зможе прижитись на нашій вільній землі. Нема загарбника, який зможе панувати над нашим вільним народом. Рано чи пізно ми перемагаємо. Хоч орда, хоч нацизм, хоч суміш першого і другого, яку представляє нинішній ворог, ми перемагаємо, бо це наша земля. Бо хтось воює за батюшку царя, за фюрера, партію і вождя, а ми за батьківщину. Ми ніколи не воювали проти когось, ми завжди воюємо за себе, за свою свободу, за свою незалежність, щоб перемога наших предків була недаремна. Вони бились за свободу для нас і перемогли. Ми б'ємось за свою свободу, за свободу своїх дітей, а отже переможемо. Ми ніколи не забудемо те, що зробили наші предки у Другій світовій війні, де загинуло понад 8 мільйонів українців і додому не повернувся кожен 5-й українець. А загалом війна забрала щонайменше 50 мільйонів людських життів. Ми не кажемо «можемо повторити», бо хотіти повторити 2194 дні війни може тільки божевільний, той, хто вже повторює сьогодні жахливі злочини гітлерівського режиму, наслідує нацистську філософію, копіює все, що робили вони. Він приречений, бо проклятий мільйонами предків, коли почав наслідувати їхнього вбивцю. А тому втратить все. І зовсім скоро в Україні буде 2 дні перемоги. А в когось не залишиться жодного. Перемогли тоді, переможемо і зараз. І Хрещатик побачить парад перемоги. Перемоги України. З Днем перемоги над нацизмом. Слава Україні!
And with that, that was the end of the video. Of course, Zelenskyy always makes quotable lines in every single speech. This one, he said, sooner or later we will win, and that has pretty much become the phrase of Victory Day today, is sooner or later, Ukraine will win. And with that, that was the address from the president, and we'll now be entering the question segment. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and first up in the question segment, we have a question from the Vladinator, who puts in a $50 donation and says, "Thank you, Enforcer, for last night's stream. You guys are doing awesome work. So glad you and Starsky are working together. And my question is there any news on the capability of the Phoenix Ghost drones Ukraine got from the United States?"
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I am glad that you enjoyed Sunday night's fundraiser. I did as well. That was a huge deal to me, and I was really impressed that we were able to get that much support. But to answer that question about the Phoenix Ghost drone, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get any news on it, and I'm not really sure if a lot is still known about them. We haven't gotten a lot of videos of them being used yet, although we have had one video that claims that it was a Phoenix Ghost drone. So with that, I hope that does answer the question. I do thank you very much for the support. Unfortunately, there's just not enough information about it yet, but I will be trying to find as much as possible here in the coming weeks if that information does become available. So with that, I thank you so much once again, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Captain Chris 1220, who says, "Hell of a stream last night. Congrats to you guys. That was so awesome."
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I'm glad that a lot of people do enjoy what we do here on this channel and everything we try and do to help out. Of course, there's always things that can be improved, but by and large, I feel like we're doing pretty well in terms of the support we're giving and the news we're delivering. So with that, I thank you so much for the support once again, and I am glad that you do enjoy what we try and do here. So thank you once again. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm literally like I'm having a very hard time tonight. But anyways, I thank you so much for the support once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have one from B. Baldy, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Enforcer, are you going to sell the Enforcer Starsky shirt, maybe in Ukraine colors?"
Oh, that's something that's kind of a little bit of a tough territory for me to enter into. One thing I do not want to do is make my merchandise war profiteering in a way. And one of the things I feel like would start leading down that category is to start plastering Ukrainian flags on them or anything that that pertains to the Ukrainian military, because then I don't really feel like it's supporting the channel. I feel like we would be reaping the benefits 100% from making merchandise about the war, and I don't really like that idea. If people want to buy the merch, of course people are still like dumb for some reason, or like some people, and they sit there and say I'm war profiteering with the merch, but I've made it clear the merch is to support the channel. And then for a while 10% of the merchandise profits went to a charity, but we've actually taken that down last night because it's it's just what we decided because it's not really doing all too well, honestly. But with that, probably won't, because then on top of also doing something that would be kind of like pertaining into the Ukraine area of the war, it would also be using Starsky's name for profit, and I don't really like that idea either. It seems kind of a little sketch. But with that, thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay, yeah, you broke up there for just a moment. But up next, we have a question from Rick Clay, who puts in a $20 donation and says, hope.
Hello? I think you just cut out, Matthew. 1 second, everyone. Let me go check on Matthew. The voice call is good. Matthew, you there? Hello? Hello? Testing, testing. 1 second, everyone. I think Matthew's MacBook just exploded. So I'll be back. Let me go check on him real quick. Testing, testing. Hello?
Okay, I can hear you now.
All right, so with that, let's get to that question.
Okay, did you hear the one from Rick Clay?
I did not.
Okay, so Rick Clay says, hope info helps.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I don't know what particular info you're talking about, but of course, a lot of people try and send me information throughout the days, all the time, and I'm very appreciative of everyone who does do that. I try and look over it the best I can, but of course, I'm always very pressed for time. But I do thank you very much for the support once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And for everybody asking, I think that was a Discord issue, actually. I did not doze off, and my Mac did not catch on fire this time. So thank you, Discord. But anyways, moving on to the next one. We have a $20 donation from, let's see here, Hegemony Cricket. I'm probably not saying that right, but anyways.
Hegemony?
Please pronounce... yeah, there you go. He says, please pronounce Stugna properly. Starsky kept dropping clues, but you weren't getting them. Slavic languages do not have a short U sound, as in tug. The U is the same as in Putin, pronounced Stugna. Accuracy counts.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, but one thing I have to say is that I'm just going to be honest, I'm kind of getting tired of the grammar Nazis, and everyone trying to have me correctly pronounce stuff. Like for example, let me show y'all something, because I'm sure a lot of people will sit there and get this one wrong. Just as an example of everyone's not going to get everything right all the time. This town right here, it looks like it's pronounced Gaudier, isn't it? Yeah, it looks like that, but it's actually pronounced Gaucher. And so, if you're from outside of Mississippi or outside of the South, you're going to call that Gaudier most likely. And so you're not going to sit there and say Gaucher. And of course, I'm not going to treat you like an idiot because you call it Gaudier. I'm going to say, oh, it's like Gaucher. You could call it Gaudier, and I could care less. So I understand what you're saying, but of course, I am an English speaker, and of course everyone's going to, well, not everyone. Some people are going to act like this is insane or something, but I don't speak a lot of foreign languages. The only one I can speak is Spanish, and that's hardly. So I don't really have a lot of experience pronouncing things differently. Like have a German try and pronounce squirrel and see how that goes. So I thank you for the support. I'll try and do that. I try and do that with everything, but at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm going to be a perfect pronunciator of Ukrainian words. Hell, I can't even go to Britain and pronounce most of the village names correctly there. And that's another English-speaking country. So with that, I do thank you very much for the support, and I hope that kind of addresses the comment in a way. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right. And the next question is from Kaltenberg, who puts in a $20 donation and says, keep it going, Enforcer.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. I'm glad that you do enjoy what we're doing here in the stream. Of course, try and put a lot of effort into it. a lot of people always bring up pronunciations. Can't get that right all the time, but still, I try. So, you know, that I do thank you very much for the support, and I'm glad that you do enjoy what we do here. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Rich, who says, Putin just needs a small piece of lead between the head.
Yeah, well, that was a very polite way of putting it, but yeah, I think he could use some. I'm sure it'd be a nice aesthetic modifier to his already very weird-looking face. He has an incredibly, like, large, bulbous nose. That's one thing that I've always noticed looking at him. So, yes, I think that a small piece of lead on his head or through it may help him out a lot in terms of how he looks. And so with that, I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $15 donation from a absolute channel, longtime supporter, Zyper Sniper 1, who says, it looks like Ukrainians using proper tanks and Russians using toasters on wheels.
Could you read that one again?
They said, it looks like Ukrainians are using proper tanks and Russians are using toasters on wheels.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I get what you're saying there, but really, the Ukrainians and the Russians really use the exact same class of tanks. It's just that the Ukrainians have modernized their tanks a little bit differently than the Russians. But I do get what you're saying, and for the large part, whenever you actually open up a Russian tank like a T-72 or a BT or an armored personnel carrier like a BTR-82 or a BMP-3 or something like that, they're usually filthy. So if you're calling them toasters for that, yes, I would entirely agree. The Russian tanks are poorly kept compared to Ukrainian ones, but they are actually pretty much the same class of tanks. But I do thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment, and I do agree. Usually Russian tanks look like they're poorly maintained, even the modernized ones. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Right C, who says, did you know that the Canadian sniper Wally left Ukraine and his other Canadian had a lot to say about situation in Ukraine?
I actually hadn't heard a lot about that. I haven't really followed Wally a lot, you know, because out of all the things really in the war, a single while snipers, of course, have been famous, like Simon of Finland, and also, oh man, I forgot the one from Stalingrad. But still, snipers, of course, become very prolific and popular figures during wars. I don't really follow them a lot, you see, because the thing is that while it is one guy and the sniper, of course, can do an incredibly large amount of work, I find it more important to focus on the larger picture, you know, of what tens of thousands of troops are doing instead of a single one. So I've never actually tried to follow any particular soldier story to a T during this entire war. So I haven't actually heard anything about him leaving Ukraine and going back to Canada. But I do thank you very much for the support. I hope that does kind of answer the question in a way. Pretty much I haven't heard about that yet, but I do thank you for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Sam Foe, who says, ignore the grammar Nazis. No one likes them. They add nothing to the conversation, and we all know what you're trying to say. Keep it up.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, Sam, and I kind of have to, not to go on a rant again here, but it's really annoying to me that I can sit here and get $216,000 of support raised through fundraisers for Ukraine, constantly be delivering news, and some of it isn't always accurate. Like the Admiral Makarov apparently was not hit. It was just like very apt reporting, and it was actually the landing craft that got hit on the same day that everyone was talking about, and then they just upped the size of the landing craft to a frigate and called it the Admiral Makarov in a way for a bit. And so yeah, I can admit things are wrong here, and things do need to be corrected. But as far as pronunciation goes, I don't know why some people don't want to give a break on that, because it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not going to go around everywhere always pronouncing everything correct, you know? And then on top of that, there's accents as well, and that will lead to incorrect pronunciations anyways. Like, when I say the rank of a military leader that's very high up, you know, near the top end of the brass, a lot of people will say general like that. But because I'm Southern, I say general. And, you know, what are people going to do? Say, it's not pronounced general, there's another E in there. It doesn't matter. It's getting the point across, in my opinion, and that's really all that counts to me. So, I mean, like, I appreciate that people want to be accurate on things, but at the same time, you know, it doesn't really matter. Because if I say Poltava, and you're like, it's Poltava, you're still getting the picture that it's the city that is in the area of whatever you want to call this. So, I do thank you very much for the support. That's kind of what I think about it. And at the same time, I always make the disclaimer: I'm not an expert on everything. I can't pronounce Ukrainian town names well. I butcher them. And even Starsky said other Ukrainians butcher pronunciations of some of the villages in Ukraine as well. So I don't know why people are going to hold me to a bar, being a native English speaker who has hardly or not at all spoken a foreign language, and expect me to be perfectly pronouncing all of the names of all of these towns and villages in Ukraine as well. But I thank you very much for the support. I'm glad you agree with me, and I try and not pay them too much attention, but every once in a while it does get a little annoying that people get stuck up on such small things. But anyways, I thank you very much for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a comment from JKB, who puts in a $25 donation and says, agreed. Great stream last night. It went very smoothly, despite a slight change in format. Starsky was awesome, level-minded, and very thoughtful with his input. Thanks, y'all. Slava.
Well, thank you very much for the support and throwing in the y'all. I, of course, appreciate all of y'all. And when y'all sit there and bring up my southernness, which of course is funny, and I don't really mind it. You know, y'all can sit there and talk about like all the normal southern jokes. It doesn't matter to me. I find it funny, actually. I like them. But yeah, I do have to say, Starsky was a very interesting change to the format. And while I wasn't nervous to talk to Starsky, I was actually nervous about how the format was going to go last night because, you know, Moscow Mike was the only other foray that we took into actually talking with a guest, and that one didn't go well, and it didn't go long enough for me to get a good idea of what a guest would be like on stream. So I was actually trying to iron out how that would work as the stream went on, and it seems like it went incredibly well. We had a pretty decent dynamic going on, and so I'm glad that you did enjoy it, and I'm glad that it did turn out well, because there's a lot of ways, of course, on my end, you know, in presenting and stuff that it could have turned out kind of a little rough. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I'm very glad that you did enjoy last night's stream. And I hope that you did contribute to the fundraiser as well, because that's pretty much like the shining emblem of the Lee Spring Army is the amount of support we levy. So I thank you so much once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And just to let Carolyn Evans know, your question is up now. Carolyn Evans puts in a $10 donation and says, thanks, guys. I saw another Leaf Spring Army in a whole different and unrelated stream today in the chat. We connected. It was really cool. So here's a few bucks for Operator Starsky's shirt.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. We are going to get a shirt to him. We've actually decided with Starsky that he doesn't actually want the shirt now. He wants it once victory is declared. So we'll probably, because my kind of plan is that hopefully by that time I'll be able to go over to Ukraine and actually finance some making videos over there and stuff like that. And so the plan would be to go over there and actually meet him and give him the shirt, you know, and kind of like add that into the video so that way that could be seen, you know, kind of like as the last thing my channel would have to do directly with the war, and also keeping up with the promises I always give. So with that, I do thank you so much for the support, and it is really cool to hear that the Leaf Spring Army has far-reaching tendrils, I guess you could say. We've become an incredibly large community, and there's a lot of people from all around the internet now that are members of the Leaf Spring Army. So that's super cool to hear that y'all met up again. Maybe we can have roving packs of the Leaf Spring Army that move around from stream to stream and just kind of, you know, just kind of like a cultural crew pretty much. But I thank you so much for the support. That's really cool to hear, actually. I haven't heard that before, so I like that. And thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And on Operator Starsky's shirt, I was thinking the other night, he probably doesn't want UPS rolling up to his door delivering a package, because I'm sure there's a lot of people from the Russian side of things that probably want to deliver packages too. So totally understandable why he wouldn't want that.
Yeah, that's true. You know, the guy could, you know, be delivering the shirt, but he could also be delivering the hurt too. So I guess Starsky doesn't want the chance of that. And I don't want the chance of that to happen to him as well. So in that regard, I can understand completely why he wants to wait till the end of the war. And I'll probably just go over there. If it's possible, I'm not saying that it's a definite certainty, but if it's possible, go over there and give him the shirt myself. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $15 donation from Zyper Sniper 1 again. Then thank you very much for your continued support. He says, here is a coffee fund for you and Matt. Great work and keep it up. And Zyper Sniper, we can definitely use all the coffee we can get at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Matthew right now, but I drank a coffee and it didn't even work. I don't know if that's what he's dealing with right now.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, y'all. I mean, like, also, It's really honestly, it's been very tough doing this stream. Really, it's supposed to be the Monday off, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure to cover Victory Day. So I'm sorry, everyone, if I do seem a little low energy. I kind of am, so forgive me for that. But with that, we're now going to move on to the next question. And thank you so much, Cyper Sniper, for making sure that we can drink 2 coffees tomorrow instead of just 1.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from CYN945, who says, "Hi, enforcers. Thanks for the Leaf Spring Army and the good you do for the Ukrainian people. No need to air my comment. I just keep doing good. Slava Ukraine." And we actually aired it anyway, so there you go.
And I thank you so much for the support once again. I won't hover on it too much since you requested for it not to be, but I do thank you so much for the support once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have another comment from Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in another $10 donation and says, "Ukraine should make their own parade where they show all the vehicles and the tanks that they have destroyed. Slava Ukraine."
Horom Slava, and I thank you so much for the support. And I can agree, it would be very interesting to see a victory parade in Ukraine, not necessarily of the destroyed vehicles, because that'd be very hard to manage, but the captured vehicles would be incredibly interesting. We know they have about 120 of them, which is large enough to definitely run an incredibly long parade of armored vehicles alone. So with that, I could entirely agree. And also, I saw someone say something really interesting to kind of give a little bit of information about Matthew and me. Rob Lewis said the Welsh are notorious warriors. And you know what's really interesting is that I actually did like the spit in the bottle thing, like the DNA test to see where we're from. And we're actually like 70% Welsh. So I guess you could say we kind of like have that dog whisperer thing with sheep. So if you get that joke, you're probably from Britain. And of course, I'm just playing around, not serious at all. But with that, I do thank you very much for saying that. The Welsh are, of course, a famous fighting nation, pretty much within the British Isles. But with that, we're now going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, "Zelenskyy has the style and the class. When we have seen a leader take a walk and make a speech, which looks like he is taking a casual walk with each individual citizen of Ukraine."
It really does, and I have to say that the editing that the editors do in those videos is incredibly good, and they also get a very good composition to go with what he's saying. And it sounds like they're custom made, don't they, Matthew, to kind of like fit what he's saying? You know, like how they can construct the music in a way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and so I got to say, I mean, like the very impressive videos, and also the speeches he gives are very eloquent and very well put, and that's something rare. And just to be honest, that's something we haven't seen in American politics, I'd say, for about 20 years at this point. Well, even further than that, really. Good Lord, I mean, like, you could really go back an incredibly long time in American history and not find well put together speeches. And there's been a few, of course. There's some shining examples, in recent modern history, but not a lot. And Zelenskyy comes out nearly daily at this point, and he's pretty much dropping down speeches for the books in a way. So I thank you very much for the support, and I can agree that the speeches that Zelenskyy gives and how they're delivered is incredibly well. And I think that may be down to his former career in show business over there in Ukraine. It's given him a lot of experience kind of setting that stuff up and making a scene really nice. And so with that, I think, and don't take that the wrong way, I mean scene as in the filming way of scene, not scene as in, trying to be dramatic or anything. And with that, I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a question from BC Skyman, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "My wife's friend lives on the border of Crimea and said they removed the mines and there was absolutely no military presence in her city on the day of the invasion. Why is that? Only police that ran away."
Could you reread that one again near the start?
Yes, he said, "My wife's friend lives on the border of Crimea and said they removed the mines and there was absolutely no military presence in her city on the day of the invasion. Why is that?"
Unfortunately, I don't have any information about that. We've had that question asked before, but we haven't actually been able to gain an answer to that, and I haven't really actually been able to get any information backing that up either. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that due to ignorance. And so with that, I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Phil Tatham, who says, "The sheep are afraid in Wales, LOL."
Well, thank you very much for the support. And I think the sheep live in fear of Wales every day, of the Welsh. I remember one time we went through there on a vacation a long time ago. This was years ago, but we went through there through Snowdonia, and we actually saw someone shearing a sheep, but the way they were like holding the sheep, I think Matthew can remember this. The way they were holding the sheep and shearing it was really questionable. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, Phil. It helps us out a lot, and I do like the joke. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from TJ Johnson, who says, I'm glad you finally stood up and said that. You've been very tolerant thus far. Keep up the great work you've been doing and do it in the style we have all come to appreciate.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. I'm glad that you do enjoy what we do. And I'm happy that you noticed that I try and be as polite as possible with stuff like that. Like, you know, every once in a while, I see things going through the chat, and I don't think a lot of people realize that now that I have a second monitor, I pretty much see every single chat that comes through along with Matthew. And I think some people are thinking that they're saying stuff and I'm not seeing it, but I read everything. So I'm of course always reading the millions of people who sit there well, not millions, you know, it's like a couple, maybe 100 people or so, and they'll say, oh, you pronounce this wrong, it's this, it's that, you know, and all that. And I try and be very polite about it, but at some point I just get, like right now, you know, on top of that, I'm very tired, so my patience is, you know, much lower than it normally is. And I'm sitting there like, what's the problem? You know, like I'm literally running the news. Sadly, things will be mispronounced, but it's not going to end the world. It's not like if I pronounce Poltava, the city's going to disintegrate or anything. So I thank you very much for the support, and kind of noting that I've been very patient with that, but at some point, you know, it's like enough is enough. Things will be pronounced wrong. Everyone's just going to have to kind of live with that. So I thank you once again for the support and also understanding where I'm coming from. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
All right. And next up, we have a $5 donation from Kleiner Hund, who says, let's go.
Let's go! And I thank you so much for the support. I don't know what that's in reference to, but I do thank you so much. And we are going. I mean, like, the fundraiser last night was massive, and hopefully next Sunday's fundraiser will be even larger, although that is a high goal, but the Leaf Spring Army never fails. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have another $20 donation from Hegemony Cricket, who says, from last week, the foot wraps the Russians use are called Portyanki. They have used in Eastern Europe for hundreds of years. Very practical and durable. Not a sign the Russian army cannot afford socks. Still very common.
Could you type that? Could you tell me how to spell that real quick?
Spell the Portyanki?
Mm-hmm.
I am actually going to put that in the chat.
All right. Let's see here. Also, to answer James Carroll's question, yes, we are family. We're brothers. So, Portyanki. Let's take a look at this. Foot wraps. Interesting. I thought when you said Portyanki, they were going to be putties. If y'all don't know what a putty is, I'll pull that up in a second. But interesting. I did not actually know that these were a thing. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. I didn't actually know that. And just for y'all to know what I was thinking those were going to be, I thought they were going to be putties, which are which are normally found on a World War I uniform. And here's the best example of one. It looks like they even have the 1917 Pershing trench boots that I have. But putties are pretty much a cloth wrapping you wrap around the bottom of the pant legs and also put them over the boots. And it generally makes a very good seal against mud, but not so much water. The water kind of just, you know, seeps through, but the mud, you know, it actually keeps out incredibly well. And you can actually see a very good picture of one in World War I right here. That's kind of what I thought he was talking about, but I didn't know that the Russians also had some kind of foot wrap like a sock. And so thank you very much for sharing that. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, Men of Harlech, stand ye steady. It cannot be ever said, for ye the battle were not ready. Welshmen never yield.
Oh, thank you very much, Hoodoo, Texas, for sharing that. That actually used to be one of my favorite songs. Of course, I don't really have modern taste in music, but I really love that song. And then I actually found out after I learned about the song that it was actually used in the movie Zulu, which was a pretty popular film way back in the day. You know, and it was about the 24th Regiment of Foot at the Battle of Rorke's Drift. And if y'all don't know about that, very interesting because just prior to that, the British lost the Battle of Isandlwana. And y'all ought to go pull that up and look at that whole entire story on its own, the Zulu War. It was a very, very interesting historical event that had a lot of odd things happen in it. So with that, I thank you so much for sharing that. Of course, Men of Harlech is a very good British military song, and I believe it's actually the Slow March of the Welsh Guard, if I am correct. So I thank you very much for the support, Hoodoo Texas, and also you're the guy with the FT-17, so thank you once again, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Mech Tactical, who says, Leaf Spring Army Morale PVC patches, please. Many online retailers to choose from. Count me in for one of those.
Could you reread that one again?
Leaf Spring Army Morale PVC patches, please. Many online retailers to choose from. Count me in for one of those.
Oh, okay. I thought he was talking about a Starsky Enforcer patch. I was like, But yes, I would do a Leaf Spring patch. That would be pretty neat. So I might consider it. I don't know if we can do that through Teespring, but we may look into that and see if it is a possibility. So thank you so much for the support once again, and I hope that does address the question in a way. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Mannix on the Air, who says, Salutations, Enforcer, my blind brother and friends in Ratsylvania commend your coverage of the conflict. Great job with the fundraiser, and Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. Of course, the fundraiser did incredibly well. It's something that we pride the channel on, is doing fundraisers. And I've seen some people saying that the channel will continue on different after the war, and it will. We'll be covering Ukrainian news, but we're probably going to try and expand out to cover more news of different kinds that don't even cover the Ukrainian war. But still, at the same time, I was thinking, while it may be different from the Ukrainian war, we could, of course, still run fundraisers and stuff for whatever we're talking about. And I always thought that would be really interesting if this was kind of like a new format to do news, is that it'll support it through the viewers, which is the super chats and merchandise sales, and then we could run fundraisers for whatever we're talking about, and it's just like a general fundraiser that's just supporting some kind of nice humanitarian cause or something like that, because then not only are we reporting the news, we're actually doing some good as well. And so I thank you so much for enjoying what we do here, and I am thinking into the future and trying to see where we could go from here, because the Leaf Spring Army is massive. It does a load of help, and it's a very nice force of good, and I think we could actually harness that and keep that momentum going even after the war. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Adam Lee Fox, who says, I don't know if you know, but that flag was made by a Jewish soldier that used his mother's red tablecloth. What irony.
That's very much irony. I didn't actually know that about the victory banner, if that's what you're talking about. But if it was, that's news to me, and that's really interesting to hear. So I thank you very much for the support, and also giving us a little tidbit of info like that. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Ben, who says, Putin looked very sad, weak, and didn't even smile. Obviously affected by the amount of equipment lost in Ukraine. He doesn't care about his soldiers.
No, he doesn't. And when you look at this parade now, you know that all of those soldiers have been getting a little bit of news of what's actually going on in Ukraine. And then he even said in his speech that some of the units that were in the parade had actually been pulled out of Ukraine to be there for it. And so now they have a really good idea of how little Putin actually cares for them and how little compensation they get for their sacrifice in a way for their nation. So I do thank you very much for the support and the comment. I can entirely agree with that statement. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And we now have a $5 donation from Anthony K. Smith, who says, Sorry, Enforcer, but I feel vindicated over my comments about Ukraine going into Crimea after Operator Starsky's comments.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And yes, Operator Starsky came on here and said a lot of interesting stuff last night, and I hope that it did help you to make the best decisions possible. And also, it helped out a lot of people to support the fundraiser, which, of course, was wonderful and profound in a way. And so I thank you so much for the support once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Hegemony Cricket again, who says, Those cannons were 152 millimeter D20 guns, considered a Soviet classic in Russia, not an indication they didn't have better guns available.
I don't know specifically what you're talking about. Do you think he's talking about those Victory Day Parade cannons that I showed near the start?
Probably so.
I can tell you for certain those are not 152 millimeter from what I know. Let me pull those up real quick. 152 millimeter. What did he say the gun was according to him?
152 millimeter D20 guns.
D20. Let's pull that up. There's a D20. And you can see that this artillery piece is much stockier than the actual piece they were using at the Victory Day Parade, if we are talking about the correct thing. And it also has a muzzle brake on it. And if you look at the Victory Day Parade cannons, which we'll just type in and show, if we can get some good pictures of it. Images, 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 images. We can see the Chinese here. That's not the Russians, though. Let's just type in Russian Anthem Victory Day Parade. Russian Anthem Victory Day Parade cannon. And so, I don't know what this is, a reaction video apparently to the cannon anthem, which is a weird reaction video to have. But you can see that those guns are entirely different. Two totally different guns. These are 76.2 millimeter guns. But with that, I do thank you very much for the support, and I do thank you for the enthusiasm of trying to identify the guns used at the Victory Day Parade, but they are 76.2 millimeter guns. But I do thank you so much for trying to clarify that, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Sheila McDaniel, who says, "God bless and protect you."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I do hope that I am blessed and protected. So thank you very much once again. I am glad that you enjoyed these streams a whole load. And with that, we're going to go on to the next question.
And next up, we have a question from Philip Fixes for $5. He says, "Great work last night. I am so proud. Literally shed a couple of tears. How can anyone know the words to the Ukrainian anthem and still invade? Slava Ukraine."
Heroam Slava, and I thank you so much for the support. One thing to me is that I've always been running this channel the way I just ran it at the start. I really haven't changed at all over the course of this thing, you know, and that's one thing I've always been very aware of trying to do, is make sure that none of this actually changes who I am, although it has changed how much time I've had. That's like the one thing that has changed, and so it makes me a little stressed out here and there because I run out of time sometimes to do things, but that's one thing I've always tried to do, is make sure that I have enough time to operate everything on the stream, and, you know, that kind of wears me out. But rather than that, I try and stay the same way I am, and so I never really think about how big this has gotten and how important it is until comments like that, where you say you shed a few tears, and that's really something to me, that I've just kind of did this out of the compassion for the people I knew in Ukraine, and wanting to make sure that if they ever saw any news, they would be able to get accurate information from me, because back then we thought the country was going to collapse, and I was trying to make sure they could get out of there. And now we know that the Ukrainians are winning, they're pushing them back, and so I've just continued to report the news and do as much help as I can to try and fix and rectify the situation as much as possible, you know, on my end. Which is very small in the picture of things, but very big for a single person, and the Leaf Spring Army like we are. And so it's very interesting to hear that it does have a large emotional impact on people. And I thank you so much for the support. And I hope that we have made a lot of people proud with what we're doing here in the news we're covering. So thank you so much for the support once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And we have just a few super chats left. I want to recognize a few that were left without comments. We have a $5 donation from John Doe, a $5 donation from Christopher Ellis, and a $4 donation from Junebug72, who is a really long-time channel supporter. And we thank all of you for your support of the channel. And we have just one more super chat left, which is going to be the last one for the night until we get to our live chat questions. So this one comes from Biloxi Gaudier. And no, I'm just kidding. I meant to say Biloxi Gaucher, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "One of the most conspicuous ifs." Oh, hold on. Let's start over here. Let me decipher what was meant to say. One of the most conspicuous ifs are what would have happened if Kherson hadn't fallen so early. Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I do. If Kherson hadn't if Kherson had not fallen to the Russians within the first 2 days of the war, the situation would have been massively different. A defensive perimeter would have been established across the entirety of the southern western bank of the Dnieper River from Zaporizhia to Kherson itself, and the Russians would have never actually had the chance to even consider a naval invasion near Odessa. That would have never been a fear, because there would have been no reasonable way to logistically support that naval invasion once it landed. So, really, honestly, beyond that, the capture of Kherson has not changed much. Of course, it did allow for the Russian forces to push towards Mykolaiv and also attempt to push towards Kryvyi Rih, but we haven't really seen any much changes beyond that, and the Ukrainians have contained those pushes incredibly well and have actually pushed the Russians back towards Kherson. So, with that, honestly, I don't really think a lot has changed, whether Kherson had been held by the Ukrainians or not, at least in my opinion. So take that with a grain of salt, you know. But that's all based on the knowledge and information that I've been able to gather over the 75 days of this war. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're actually going to put a cutoff on all of the super chats for the rest of the night, so that way we can kind of make sure that the stream is a little bit shorter than usual. And so with that, we're now going to answer 3 questions from the live chat and then round out this stream for the night. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And first up from the live chat, we have a question from Gabby B, who is a longtime channel supporter and always gets on the stream with an absolutely positive attitude, and I very much appreciate it. They say, do you think the low-key Russian parade could be the calm before the storm and has a big surprise up its sleeve for further destruction?
No, not really. You know, because that's always been something that a lot of people have been saying, you know, and it's something that's been reflected a lot, and I'm sure that's why you're asking the question, is that Western analysts, if you can even call them analysts, I call them shams, Western shams are always saying one after the other, once their projections the first time become wrong, you know, because they'll always go, oh, just give it until like Saturday, and then the Russians will pull a unicorn out of Siberia and they'll start winning the war, and then it doesn't happen. And then the next day, after they see it didn't happen, or even just an hour after they saw it didn't happen, they'll go, hey guys, like, you know, like, give it a second. That was just the beginning. They're really going to ramp it up now. And we've never actually seen that happen. And so, to answer that question, I don't feel that military parade's really leading to anything. It was just what happened as the holiday. They went through the motions of celebrating Victory Day with the Victory Day parade, and then nothing's really going to come out of it. The war looks like it's going to continue as normal, and there's going to be no changes. The Russians have already promised the public that conscripts will not be used in the Ukrainian war, and so if they backtrack on that and then say they're using conscripts, that's around 500,000 conscript soldiers and their families that may start going into revolt. So they can't really go back on that promise unless they're wanting to face massive civil unrest. So with that, I hope that answers the question. And I do thank you very much, Gabby, because you've been around for a very long time, and I know you have as well. And I thank you so much for enjoying these streams and being a huge supporter. It does mean a lot to us, and it helps us to keep on going. And it helps us emotionally keep on going to make sure that people do enjoy what we do. So with that, I thank you so much once again, and I hope that did answer your question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Super Creech, who says, it is my birthday today. My question is, why did Putin look so frazzled today at his little party? There was not much to celebrate, and he looked sick.
Well, I thank you so much, Super Creech, for asking a question, and also happy birthday, man. It's good to hear that you have turned another year older. Of course, it's always fun to celebrate, and so I hope you've had a fun time, and I hope this is one of the fun things you're doing on your birthday. Hopefully it's not been unfun. But to answer your question, Putin may be looking like that because, one, we know that he may have terminal cancer. We don't have any information to affirm that definitely, but we do know that he has some kind of cancer that is supposed to be treated within this period of time right now, this time window. We're not really sure if it was in the past or it's going to be in the future, or if it's today. We're not really sure. Of course, probably not today. He was around and walking today. But that may be one of the reasons. The other reason is that I believe he now knows that this whole entire Victory Day parade thing is a sham and the war is going incredibly poorly for him. And I believe that may be reflected on him emotionally, considering that there's really no way to hide that now, and it's becoming even harder and harder on Russian state TV to paint the war in a positive light, because there's really no way they can recover this whole entire situation. So I thank you very much for the question. I hope that did answer it, at least my opinions on why Putin may have looked like that. And once again, they're entirely assumptions. They may have been totally different reasons why he was acting like that. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does, well, not the support, just the question. And I also thank you so much for being on here on your birthday. You know, I would think you'd be doing more fun things on your birthday, but if this is one of the things you want to do, I'm more than honored that you enjoy these streams so much. So thank you once again. And with that, we're going to move on to the final question of this night. And so with that, what is the final question of the night, Matthew?
And the final question of the night goes to Charles Watson, who says, do you know what Edward Snowden is doing now since he is still in Russia?
I don't actually follow any of the news on Edward Snowden, because, you know, I just, you know, he's just kind of a dude. He did some stuff, you know, with exposing the government, the U.S. government, way back in the day, nearly 10 years ago now. But now he's fled to Russia, and I've really not followed a lot of news on him. So unfortunately, no, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one. I do not know what he's doing right now. And, you know, considering that he is a bit of a questionable person, you know, in terms of how he's treated in the Western world, I wonder if that's going to change for him within Russia as well. And then the question will be, where will he go from there? And so with that, I thank you so much for asking the question, and I hope that I've answered that the best I can. Unfortunately, I don't really follow Edward Snowden a lot. And with that, we've reached the end of tonight's stream. And this has probably been the hardest one for me to get through, Matthew, as well. So I hope you all have enjoyed, and I thank you all so much once again for the support and helping us to run this channel. If you are a new viewer to this stream and you do enjoy what you see, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. These streams run every single day of the week, except for Mondays. Today was the exception to that, and they run at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night. So make sure to subscribe if you would like to hear this news daily. And I thank you all so much once again for being around and watching the stream. I'm highly honored once again that all of y'all picked this as the most reliable and accurate source of news on the Ukrainian war and continue to come back to hear it. So thank you all so much, and I will see you all on tomorrow's stream at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all once again, and I'll see y'all around. Take care, and good night.